funky.
Welcome to KERRIISMS Speaks. I'm your host, KERRIISMS, aka Kerri Olivia, a writer, life coach, and digital creator at KERRIISMS.co. Every week, I share commentary and interviews on the adventures of life from a millennial's point of view. Some adventures may be personal, some may be professional. Either way, I hope you can stay tuned and stay true. Let's go. Hey guys, it's your girl KERRIISMS, aka Kerri Olivia, and welcome to another episode of KERRIISMS Speaks. I am so excited to be able to share another episode with you. In this week's episode, we are talking to Aneakaleigh Neils about intention and living your life with purpose. And it was such a great conversation. I'm so happy to share it with you. Aneakaleigh Neils is a self-reinvention guide and mindset coach and the founder of the Caribbean Millennial. Her main goal through her blog, podcast, and workshops is to support and empower fellow Caribbean millennials across the diaspora to break out of cycles of overwhelm and unfulfillment through gratitude. And the conversation that you're about to listen to, it was so empowering, and I'm so excited to share it. So we're going to head right into the conversation. Let's go. I know they say once you're Trini Vinci or Trini Vinci or Grenadian, like it's all, it's pretty much the same.
Really? That's the first time I
Yeah.
heard that.
Really? Because a lot of people have like, well, for me, I know I have distant cousins and stuff from St. Vincent. My family is from Grenada, and I have an aunt from Trinidad. So
Okay.
it's just like, it's very, since the islands are so closely related. Are most of your family is just Trini through and through?
Yeah, like my sister I have a half sister who is Grenadian,
Mhm.
and yeah, her mom's Grenadian. She grew up in Grenada. She spent her first 12 years there, and then they moved back to Trinidad.
Oh, okay.
That's the
I
only
see.
Grenadian in my family. Everybody else is Trinidad.
Is Trini?
As far as I know.
Oh, okay. Okay. What is one of your favorite memories of growing up there?
Gosh, it's so hard to pick. Like, so many things, like spending the July-August vacation down in Mayaro, for example, because my mom's side of the family is from South, from Tabaquite area, and so like the core parts of the family are from Mayaro and Guayari, that like South area, and for school vacation, summer, Java as we call it nowadays, to go down to Mayaro, and we'd be like, they lived like right on Plaisance Road, which is like straight down to the beach. So we would just be chilling at home, be like, oh, let me go on the beach, spend the entire day just like baking, burning in the sun, then beaten up by waves, like literally. Then coming home and just like passing out. Those were like some of the best days. And I don't know if you know Green Days by the River.
No.
It's a really popular piece of literature. I don't remember who wrote it. I'm not super into books, but most of that story takes place down there, like back in the day. So
Okay.
it's just like this fond memory of childhood for me.
Oh, that's interesting. So, how long have you been living abroad, and what made you decide to move?
So I've been here in Spain for the last 3 years. This is my 4th year. And before this, I lived in Colombia for 2 years, but separately. So I did 1 year in between my degree program, and then after I graduated, I did my 2nd year. So like a total of going on 6 years now. This is the longest I've ever spent in a country that's not home. Spain's like my second home, but it doesn't really feel that way.
Yeah.
It feels a constant party, to be honest. I've just always wanted to travel. Like since I was growing up, it's not that I don't like my country or my culture. I absolutely adore everything that is Trinidadian. But I just, growing up, I just always wanted to see more. I always wanted to explore more. Like there's like a whole world outside.
Yeah.
And the concept of, I'm fascinated by languages. And so for me, it only makes sense to want to travel and want to see the world, to be able to speak with people in their native language and like experience cultures authentically, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So yeah, so for me, it's always been this thing that I grew up with. I used to spend like days just because I live in Port of Spain, in Belmont, which is like right near the Northern Range, and like the planes would like fly in and out over town. And like I
Mm-hmm.
would always be like outside every time I heard a plane, I would just like run outside to like look up in the sky. And like
Yeah, yeah.
something that I just always wanted for myself. So yeah.
What was your initial reaction to moving? Like, what was one of like the feelings that came up when you made that step, and for you actually taking that step when you arrived? And has it changed for you over the course of the 4 years, almost 4 years that you've been there?
Yeah. It's funny because for me, like my process of like moving abroad is like, well, I don't know how like, a young black woman like me from Gonzales gonna move abroad. So like I focused on languages and I studied
Mm.
Spanish like throughout secondary school, and then I did my degree in Spanish. There's like a mini detour for a year where I put myself through hell for no reason, and I was doing an environmental science, and I was like, what is this? And I
Hmm.
switched back to Spanish, and I really did want to study languages to have that opportunity to move abroad. And in the Spanish program, so the first year I spent in Colombia,
Hmm.
at the end of year two, they choose three people to move to Colombia to teach English. And I remember that year, I was in second year. I was like, come to the end of second year, like, oh, are you gonna apply? Like, this is the reason I switched to Spanish. This is the reason I've been studying
Yeah.
Spanish, entire life. Here I was, and I was just like, no, I'm not. I'm not gonna do it. I am one of those people. Used to be, I can say that now. Used to be one of those people who was like really afraid of like failure. Like, you don't want to
Hmm.
put yourself out there.
I
It's
can
kind of like,
relate.
yeah, you'd rather not try
It's just like, let
than to
me just stay in this safe space and like, because I know this space is fine. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fine. Like I put myself out there. And the only reason I ended up applying that year was because it was literally just going to be three of us applying.
Mm.
So three of us were gonna go. Everybody else was like, yeah, no, I just want to graduate and find a job. He was like, okay. Then when I
Yeah,
realized that, everybody else wasn't gonna do it, I was just gonna be three of us. I was like, okay, well, fine, yeah.
yeah.
The whole process of moving abroad is just like so stressful, like emotionally,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
You are leaving behind so much. And I mean, like, this is what you want, but like when the time really comes, it's just like, oh my goodness, what am I getting myself into? Colombia wasn't bad because we had like a lot more support, like through the universities and that kind of thing. I think
Mhm.
Spain was definitely like a much bigger culture shock because it's like, oh my gosh, you're moving to Europe. It's
Yeah.
like, what? I never thought that I would ever live in Europe. So just like, I remember looking at maps of the city because I was moving to Madrid at that point, looking at maps of Madrid and like the metro maps, and I was just like, oh my god, this looks so confusing. I don't know what I'm.
Yeah.
And then like we had no support. Like you had to like find your own housing and things like that. Like set up your
Mm.
bank accounts and get your ID sorted and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, yes, it's the thrill of moving somewhere new, but it's
Mhm.
also the anxiety and the overwhelm of legally doing
Yes.
it and
Yeah.
like surviving,
It's
wow.
one thing when it's in your head, and then the next
Mm,
when you're like actually going through the motions of it. Yeah.
right, yeah, for sure. So I think though that it's been a while, and I think I'm used to that now because I just moved from Madrid to a city in the south of Spain called Murcia. So I've
Mhm.
been here since August, and that was stressful, but it wasn't like, I was more thinking of, okay, well, new chapter, something different. It's
Yeah.
like it was stressful, but I didn't let the short term, like this is happening right now, overwhelm the entire
Mhm.
process.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think my view on moving has definitely changed, especially when I consider now the why behind it.
Yes. Okay.
Thinking more long term as opposed to, oh my god, this right now sucks, but okay, in
It's a good
literally
investment.
yeah, in literally a week, this is, yeah, like you said, it's a perfect investment of your time.
Mhm. Mhm. My move was not as big as yours because you moved from one continent to the next.
Right.
That's huge in itself. I just
Yeah.
moved from Brooklyn to Toronto. and that in
Mm.
itself felt very different, even though they seem to be very similar, but they're very different. And it took me. I was telling a family member yesterday. Actually, it took me about nine. This is going to be my next year. Is going to be my ninth year. It took me last year, 2019, to be fully like, okay, this is home. Like I didn't feel like that for a very long time.
Wow.
Yeah, it felt so different because I felt like I was just transplanted. Did you feel like
Mhm.
that in your experience of moving abroad? That you were transplanted, or did it change because it was something that you wanted?
I don't know. Like that's a good question. I've never really thought about it. When I think about being transplanted, kind of like, you feel so different and so like, not acclimatized, not used to everything that's going on around you.
Yeah.
I think that for me, it kind of just comes with the territory, especially like
Mm,
for moving from, like you said, one continent to the next, small island, big city, English speaking, Spanish speaking,
mhm.
predominantly black, predominantly white, everything.
Yeah,
Different. There's
yeah,
nothing that I can hold on to and be like, okay, you know.
yeah. So
So yeah,
everything is just like yeah. Oh wow, it's just like so many like differences for you at one time. Yeah.
at once. So it's just like, so for me, it's kind of like the norm. Like, I know what I'm getting myself into, and
Hmm.
I'm just gonna roll with the punches.
Okay. You said that you had to learn a new language, so you learned Spanish. And
Yeah.
how did that play a role in your experience overall?
I because like I started like teaching myself Spanish from a young age, and like I just really like languages. It's something that always came easier to me.
Hmm.
And with that being said, that's super important because living in Colombia, for example, for 2 years, I lived in a big city and also a small town there.
Okay.
So that was probably, I mean, at university, I recognized that there were like, different types of Spanish because I had a Venezuelan teacher, I had a teacher from Spain, Colombians, and a Cuban. So like I could recognize difference in accents, for example. But then like when you actually live in and you experience like the culture behind the language,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
language changes wherever you go. So like you speak
Hmm.
Spanish, yes, but you speak like academic textbook Spanish. And then
Ah,
you're
yes. Yes.
right, and then you're in a small town in Colombia. And it's like I have no idea what anybody is saying. I still don't know what they said to me when I was there. If they wouldn't speak
Hmm. Hmm.
standard Spanish, it was just like I don't know what you're talking
Hmm.
about.
That's so interesting to note because there's the language and then there's the regional part of the language. And then there could be slang words or words that
Exactly.
yeah, that's like specific to that place that you're
Yeah,
in. So you never know.
exactly. And yeah,
Yeah.
just like even moving from Colombia to Spain,
Hmm.
the things that were like everyday Spanish for me while I was there
Hmm.
doesn't happen here. And it's like,
Uh-huh.
quote unquote, not allowed or like the concept doesn't exist. So like
Uh,
there's like, so in Colombia, you say when you go to a store and you want to buy something, you literally say me regalas and whatever it is, and that translates to can you gift me
mm,
whatever it is. It's a
mm.
very like I wouldn't not polite in a formal term, but polite in a more friendlier context, right?
Yeah, yeah,
If you see that in Spain, though, it's like, what are you talking about? You have to pay for this. It's not a gift.
yeah, yeah,
And of course, like my first week or so here, it would slip out a few times, and people would like be like, "What?"
yeah.
Uh, so it's just like you have to be like so mindful
Hmm.
of a lot of things when you're moving. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
with language. Like you can get yourself in so much trouble. Like Spanish is one of those languages that also has, depending on the country and the region of that country you go to, there are different words for straw, and they also sometimes mean penis. So
Okay.
you need to learn the word for straw for
For
the
that
space
region.
that
Got
you go
it.
in case
Yeah.
you keep asking for something
Hmm.
that you don't want.
That's oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, for sure. You don't want to be asking for, and then you actually meant something else that puts you in
Else,
a
it's so
very awkward
gonna happen.
I know that you have a platform called the Caribbean Millennial. Was that something that you were in the planning stages of when you were still in Trinidad, or was it something that came to you when you were in Spain?
Yeah, it definitely was not in the planning stages or anywhere near that when I was back home. And it only kind of like came to me in the second year when I was living in Madrid. It was one of those things where you are living your childhood dream and it's not what you thought it is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what
Mm-hmm.
you thought it would be. And I was just like, damn, this like I'm grateful that I'm having this experience, but something feels weird here.
Yeah.
And I was 25 at the time, turning 25. So, the infamous quarter life crisis was going on. And I was just like, I think it wasn't even so much like, this isn't fun. It was more like that kind of ego thing that you have where like, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And like, you worked your entire life to get to this point and like you can't even enjoy it because you're constantly thinking about what's next for me. Like, do
Right.
I not get married? Or do I like, what am I gonna do next
Right.
to top this, or like, what's my next success stop? And it's just like that was super overwhelming, super stressful. So I really wanted to create a community, a blog, a platform that kind of like, because you get on social media and you see everybody and everybody's just showing you their highlight reels
Right.
constantly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like, that's normal, I guess. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to normalize kind of like the beauty and the struggle kind of vibe, because you don't just wake up one day and have it all figured out.
Right.
You
And it
don't.
shows the balance of who we are, of
Yeah.
who we actually are as people.
Exactly. So I wanted to do that, especially because in the Caribbean, you don't have a culture of that. Like there is no real support for you when you're going through hard times. Like, it's just like everybody goes through hard times. You're not special,
Yes.
like
Yes.
suck it up and get it done. Like,
Mhm.
no, sometimes you just need to like sulk for a while. Like,
And process.
acknowledge that you're not having a good time.
Right.
That's in a nutshell where the Caribbean Millennial came out of. And then
Mhm.
too, like, with the travel, that's for a long time. I guess I played behind the fact that it was a travel blog, which it has never been. Travel was just like easy for me to do because I live abroad, right?
Right.
But even self with the travel, it's kind of like we don't have that kind of representation. Like,
Mhm.
you're trying to figure out how do I move abroad. There's always, some US passport holder from some small, predominantly white town with like inheritance, and like they could pick up and move anywhere.
Mhm.
Whereas you just like have to jump through leaps and loops and hoops and all of the,
Right.
chain, everything. And trying to figure that out is stressful. So kind of like also with that, having that representation, because for me, like representation is super important.
Coming from your lens is a very refreshing perspective for someone who's Caribbean, also a Black woman, someone who's
Yeah,
living abroad. That definitely is a great perspective to have. You want to see yourself represented in the things that you're doing. So
right.
definitely,
Yeah.
right, I can definitely see that. So, what would be a day in the life for you as a creative, as a blogger, managing your blog and stuff like that? Do you have a routine, or do you like to keep things interesting throughout the day?
That's a great question. So I'm here in Spain as an English teacher, right? So I
Mhm.
spend most of my time at school teaching English. And honestly, I feel like if it wasn't for coronavirus, it was for COVID-19, the blog would just kind of like been there,
Okay.
like I'm I don't even know why I have a blog. Let's be real.
No, I
don't,
could totally
I don't
relate to that too.
blog that often, and I'm definitely one of those people who I really feel like it's about staying true to me, and so that kind of like I want to see more of me in the world. Yeah,
Okay.
like we just talked about that representation, and I try to be considerate of that. So like in my process, I try not to put stress on myself. Like, oh, you need to create, because I see a lot of people do that to themselves, and I'm just like, ooh. And that's like one of the things that I'm really big on in my community now. Like as a life coach, I'm just like, listen, you can't be doing things that you think you need to do. Like, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, like, for me, I'm not gonna show up to post on Instagram just because you need to post. Who said you need to post on Instagram once a day? Like, what is that? If I have nothing of value to add, I'm not gonna be clogging up people's feed. Because the thing I hate the most is somebody posting an unnecessary post. I'm like, you didn't need to post that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so for me, it's kind of like I don't really have this process. I have this kind of like, it's really like if I'm experiencing something that I think is valuable, then I will show up and I will share that. And
Mm-hmm.
if I think it's not, then I won't. But in a way that can also be limiting because we're seeing it through like our own personal lens, right?
Right.
Um
Yeah. Because
and you might,
everyone's
yeah,
experience is a little it's custom made to them.
right. And
Yeah.
I might think that it's not important or it's not valuable, and it might damn well be to somebody else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's also that. Like I think I haven't really found that balance of being a creative yet. It's like I just show up when I have something to say. And if I don't, then I'm not there.
I like that. I like that a lot. I know especially with social media sometimes, I know consistency is super important, but
Is.
whenever you do get on there, you have not a mission statement, but purpose, something purposeful for you to impact your audience and not just to be there, just to be there.
It's a noise, I like to call it noise. It's so noisy on
Yeah.
social media.
And you know that saying, empty vessels make the most noise. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can definitely relate to that. When I started out, I was a beauty blogger, and it was easy, like you said, the traveling. It was easy to hide behind that. You can talk about beauty and makeup, and for the people who are professional beauty and makeup, that's their calling. But unfortunately, it wasn't really mine. I
Right.
still love makeup and stuff like that, but it wasn't my calling. It was
Mhm.
just easier for me to be on Instagram and to hide behind that. What I really wanted to talk about was spirituality and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I didn't, for me personally, I didn't want to be on there sharing pictures just because. I wanted
Yeah.
there to be a reason behind it, the reason behind what I'm doing. And I also wanted to have a community more so than people looking at me. So
Right. I
so
definitely.
that was my own personal experience with Instagram. It's like I don't need now I'm doing it more to push myself to be more consistent, but also it doesn't really your people are gonna show up for you whether or not you're consistent or not.
That's probably the biggest lesson that I learned this year. Like
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, I don't want to share this post. It's like too vulnerable. It's too this or that, or people probably
Oh,
won't. Right? Then you do, and
right.
everybody's like, yes,
Or thank
and
you so much for sharing that. I didn't.
it's like, okay, all right,
Right,
see, like,
right.
and I think that's what comes out of intentionally showing up.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know,
And also
that's what
doing
comes
it
out of
scared.
that. Yeah,
Doing it scared.
you weed all the people out, like all the people who were just there
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of pretty pictures from before, and then you get like that community that you talked about. You
Hmm.
get the core of what you really want to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really not into vanity metrics and things like that when it comes to social media because having 10,000 followers, I guess, is great, right? You get the little swipe up thing. That's
Mhm,
fun. People
mhm,
can do more stuff, right? But honestly, like for me, if I have 10,000 people following me and it's not my content is not hitting home for them, then I'm kind of I'll be a little bit disappointed in myself, you know?
mhm, mhm,
Maybe not myself per se, because that doesn't affect how I'm showing up. It just
mhm,
like I would just kind of stress myself out about I want more people to connect with this. Like,
mhm. And like, what am I? Sometimes you could turn it inward and being like, what am I doing wrong? How can I make this
oh,
better? You want to have a community that's there and shows
yeah,
up for you, and you show up for them. I was a little resistant towards the way that Instagram was going because of the pictures and the highlight reels and stuff like that. And my thing was like, I wanted to connect. That's what I think that was the highlight of social media was being able to connect with
yeah,
people from afar. Like the fact that you and I are sitting here, you're in Spain and I'm in Canada, like, and we're able to connect. That's a beautiful thing. So that's what I really wanted. That's my goal for social media, just to connect and to have a community. and to have those like human conversations that we may not be able to have in person. I think that's a really beautiful thing, and I want to like make the most out of that, of my experience on social media. Now that we're talking about community, definitely having a community as a community care can be a part of your self-care journey as well. I think that they're very much interconnected. How did you start your own self-care journey?
It really came out of like, that time when I did, like when the idea for the Caribbean Millennial came to me. That was pretty much like back in the beginning of 2019, I think, last year. Yeah, and I remember like, exactly where I was, exactly what I was going through. There was a lot more than just, like the quarter life crisis, but I think like everything like during that time was just like magnified times a thousand, right? And things that were important suddenly became important, and I was like, I had like this severe anxiety. It just came out of nowhere. And I tell people, like, I feel like I was at the brink of having an anxiety disorder. Like, if it had gone unchecked, it would have been like, something that I would have needed like help with. Like, yeah. So, and I remember I was just like, it was just like this day. And then even you're talking to yourself about things, you're just like, you need to do something about this. Like, you can't keep living like this, I said a little prayer to the universe, and I was actually at my friend's house. It was like really early in the morning because we were catching a 6 o'clock flight to Malta.
Okay.
And I was just like, I remember saying that myself in the mirror in her bathroom, and I was just like, I said this little quick prayer to the universe. I was like, yo, whatever you're gonna throw at me to help me fix this, I'm all game. And I'd actually attended a workshop like the week before with a life coach. And it was called Navigating the Quarter Life Crisis. And she like went through a bunch of different activities with us or whatever, but we didn't have enough time to finish it. So I was supposed to finish it on my own. And then we all had like a meetup session with her after the workshop. So I couldn't make it during the week. And then of course that weekend I was gonna be in Malta. So I was like, okay, I can meet up with you on the Sunday when I fly back in. But I hadn't done the activities. I was on the plane back from Malta.
Like, getting it done.
Yeah, I was like scribbling stuff down, and I literally was like to myself, I was like, I don't believe a word I just wrote, but okay. So I go and I show up, and we're having a little talk and whatever, and she like read through. I think it was like we had to do like a visualizing activity. So like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I hate those types of things. I hated those types of things because I just 5 years from now.
That's a lot. Right.
And she read it, and she said the same thing I said on the plane. She was like, I don't believe you. I was like, well, shit, I don't believe me either. So what are we going to do? And I ended up working with her for 3 months. And, we just like went through everything. Most of the things were like at the forefront at that time. So like my relationships and just like how I was showing up in my everyday life. And it was just like, I realized one of the things that she said to me, like at that first meeting, when we had that first discussion, was like, she's like, Aneakaleigh, on paper, you have such a wonderful life. Like everything is going really well for you. But there's something that's missing. And I was looking at her like my ego like wasn't missing. You just said I have a great life. Like, what's wrong with you, girl? Don't play with me. And then she goes, she's like, you don't have any love in your life. And I was like, what? Did you just say? Like, that was like the rudest thing anybody had said to me. But also the most important thing anybody had ever said to me, I thought. Like, at the same time. Like, And it was true. For some reason, like, I just always, like, had this block. Not to say, like, there was no love in my life. There's a lot of it. I just was not letting it in. Right? And so my self-care journey kind of, like, started there with learning to not just accept love, but also to love myself, because that's, like, one of the reasons why I wasn't accepting of it from outside, because I wasn't giving it to myself. Like, the way you treat yourself is the way that you interact with everybody else.
Yes, absolutely agree with that.
And that's what I learned through the entire process. And yeah, so that's where that started, and it just kind of like snowballed into this.
Mhm. Which is amazing. I really love your platform, love your posts. I can definitely relate to, especially with what you just said. Like the way that you show up for yourself is how you're going to show up in your relationships. And a lot of
Yeah,
times, your external is a reflection, it's a mirror for what's happening on the inside.
that's the word that I use all the time. I'm like, everything that's going on around you is a mirror.
Right.
Everything.
So when you feel something is going amiss, is that's a lot of times it's time to look within and being like, okay, something's happening inside. That's why my perception is viewing it as this on the outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is one of your favorite self-care practices? Well, some. What are some of your favorite self-care practices and why? It could be one, it could be two, it could be five.
I think that I'm one of those people who I'm willing to do anything. Like I shared with you, that little conversation I have with the universe. I was like, whatever it is, I'll do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
if it's just gonna help me feel better, if it's just gonna help me not be that person who I was two
Yeah.
years. So one of the first things that I did was I started journaling, like with my coach. Like she gave me a journal, and before I was one of those people, I was like, journaling, like you're just gonna like write what happened in
Mm.
like today John looked at me and you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um but it's not even that. Like for me, it never was that. Like maybe at some point it might have been, but it really just blossomed into its own kind of thing. Like if I have a thought that I find to be very powerful, I write that down. Or if I'm listening to, because I usually do guided meditation, so meditation
Mm-hmm.
is something else that I do as well, that my coach also introduced me to. Before that, like I remember my mind was just like constantly, just like words and thoughts, and just like, and it just wouldn't shut up.
Mm.
Like,
And you don't know how to shut it up. Yeah.
what is going on? And then,
Mm.
with meditation, over like daily meditation practices, it's just gotten to this place where if I pause, it's not like a flood of thoughts. There's thoughts there, but it's not overwhelming.
Mm. Mm.
So like with journaling, for example, it kind of like came through like with meditation as well. So like things that I would hear in my guided meditations, or like thoughts that would come to me and I would stick out from the others, I would write those down.
Mm.
Of course, like with my coach, she like gave me like little things to do during the week. So like one of those things was, because you move abroad and you feel so disconnected from everybody you've known your entire life, like all your friends, your family are back home, and I feel like I don't talk to them that often. I didn't talk to
Mm.
them that often, so like one of the things I had to do was like just schedule at least one call a week with somebody, and just like write about what you guys talked about and how you felt on that call and after the call and all of that. So stuff like that. And yeah, so just like things like that I would journal about. And now journaling is something that I do on and off. Definitely, like when things become or feel like they're coming to like a head, I'm just like, okay, time to journal.
Yeah.
You
Do
know?
you feel a release when you in those instances when you feel like it's coming to a head and you let it down on paper?
Yeah, but it's not just like letting it out on paper for me. Like it's like I have to journal. I have to cry. Like I have to.
Hmm.
If I
Hmm.
don't cry, then it's just gonna stay there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not like force yourself to cry. Like I know when I need to cry. Like I spent the last week crying, not because anything was bad or anything, but just because I was moved to tears.
Hmm. I think that's a really great thing you have, or you've noted about crying, that crying doesn't necessarily have to be that something's wrong. Sometimes it could be a source of joy. Sometimes it could be
Yeah,
a stress reliever. When I'm really stressed out, I cry. And then I'm like, okay, I got it out. I'm good to go. And
yeah,
sometimes like tears, you could be moved, like you said, moved to tears. You could see something really beautiful and your body reacts to that through tears. So it doesn't always have to be that something's wrong. It could be that something's really right and you're just really grateful for the moment. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So crying is also therapeutic. Actually, as you say that, I'm just talking about it, I actually learned that also through my coach. Like she made me schedule time to cry once a week.
Mm,
Like when I
mhm.
first started working with her, I was just like, cry. It's like it's really like beautiful to hear myself talk about this now,
Yeah.
knowing
Yeah.
that years ago, I never would have been crying. Like,
I can relate to that as well. Yeah, I used to have this thing where I would cry maybe once or twice a year. And now looking at that, right, and
yeah,
that was my normal. And now looking at that, if I hadn't cried in a while, I'm like something's wrong.
yeah, like
Something's wrong.
it's like this buildup
Hmm.
of energy. That's what it
Yes.
is, energy,
Yes.
and you feel like release that, like
Right. It's beautiful to see where you've been and the journey to where you
yeah,
are now. Yeah. Yeah.
hmm
It is a beautiful thing. I know we were talking about our messages of living intentionally. I wanted to hear more from you about what that means to you. What does living intentionally mean to you, and how do you share that with your own platform and audience?
I really try to communicate it as being mindful about like the things that you want. I feel like we've grown up in a society, like not just in the Caribbean, across the world, that kind of like reduces yourself to less than everybody else. Like,
Mm,
like you
mm,
put other people first.
yeah.
Like that's what our normal is now.
Mm,
And so much so like to your detriment. So I like to think of it like, respecting and honoring yourself
mm,
in your thoughts, in your actions, and like all of that needs to be a reflection of you staying true to who you are. And like that's what it to me, that's what being intentional means. It means that I show up and I do something mindfully. I do something with a goal in mind, and I'm not just doing something.
mm,
Because I feel like a lot of times in the past, I remember not remembering what I did yesterday or what I did, like, what I had for breakfast and things like that. And everything used to feel like a blur. And you see people talk about it nowadays too, and they're just like, like the month finished so fast and I don't remember anything happened this month.
oh, yeah.
Like, like now with being more mindful, being more intentional, I do remember what I did 3 months ago. I do remember where I was, who I was with, what we ate, what we talked about, just because I'm there fully
Mm,
present.
mm,
Like, and intentional living is a package, not just like one thing that you do and you be
mm,
like, oh, I'm being intentional. It's a process. There are different moving parts and they all
mm,
take time. Like you don't just wake up tomorrow morning and start living intentionally in at a certain degree, yes, because you make that decision, right?
mm,
That I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to do this and be present.
mm,
I'm going to do this and express gratitude. It's so much going on, but I feel like you need to pick one, and then it just kind of like spills out into other things, and you learn
mm,
as you go.
mm.
And I think that's one of the things too, like, across this entire conversation, that you have to be willing to learn as you go. You have to show up and just be willing to accept and surrender to the process and
Yes,
just, take it as it comes.
that's the surrender. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of being present, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-care and all this stuff, there's no like, this is the list of things you have to do, that's self-care. And then
Mm-mm.
you just magically feel better. No, you have to show up and figure it out for yourself. Like
Yeah.
you and I, we can tell our communities all the things that we do, but somebody else is gonna try it and it's just not gonna work for them.
Right. Right.
And
Self care is very custom made.
yeah,
Mm,
that's the thing about being intentional. It's like, what do you want? Because like you might not want to travel and move abroad.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
And so like if you go chasing after these things, then that's not you being intentional because that's not true to who you are,
mm.
right? So yeah, we have to be really conscious of the things that we're doing and who we're doing it for and all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I can say for myself, I didn't know who I was for a very long time.
Long time.
I was very lost. And once I started to, because everything that you need is already in there, but a lot of it is like you have to start putting the pieces together and building on what is already there. But you have to learn how to connect with yourself first. So that's very, very big what you said. something that maybe I can tell you about what works for me, and you can decide if it works for you or not. But it may not. You have to know yourself enough to know, okay, does this work for you or not?
Mhm.
No one has the key to your own path. We can just
Nope.
share our own life experiences, and hopefully we can relate to each other along the way. So, well, thank you so much for that. How has living abroad influenced your perspective on travel? And have you been, besides Spain and Colombia, have you been to any other countries since you've been abroad?
Yeah. Living abroad is really just like, a gateway to more travel. Like if you want to travel more, you should live abroad,
Mm,
especially like if you come from the Caribbean and you're not rich.
mm,
And you can't like afford to fly nobody can afford to fly to Europe like, twice a year from the
yeah,
Caribbean.
it's
That's
big,
expensive.
very much so. Yeah.
But like if you live in Spain, or a lot of Chinese and Caribbean people also live in France. If you live in Spain and France, and it's like the UK as well, it's super easy for you to just plant yourself here. This is your base, and then
Hmm.
you're off exploring, and you come back, and then you go again, and you come back, and you go. So yeah, so many things I've learned about travel thanks to living abroad. And one of them is, you again, like being intentional and being mindful and all of that stuff. Like, yes, you want to see all of the places and do all of the things,
Yeah.
but you also don't want to burn yourself out.
Yes.
Travel burnout is real,
What is
real.
that? What is that experience like for you?
It was so I used to think that it's that I burned myself out in 2019. I remember I used to think that it started with going to Berlin Carnival. And then the next weekend, my cousin came to visit me and we went to Napoli and Amsterdam. And then I came back to Madrid. And the next weekend, I worked at a summer camp for 3 weeks. And then I came back
Um,
to Madrid and my mom came and we went to Porto and London. And yeah, so
oh
that was just,
wow.
but that's not when it started. I was just reflecting on that, a few days ago because usually
Mhm.
for Christmas I'm traveling,
Mm.
and it actually started that Christmas of 2018. And my friends came from Trinidad to visit a friend of theirs who lived in Copenhagen, and I went, spent 5 days with them there. I
Mm.
came back on the 27th, no, on the 26th, yeah, Boxing Day, and I had like that night, and then 1 a.m. on the 27th, the morning of 27th, I was off to take a bus from Madrid straight down to Tarifa to catch
Mm.
a ferry to go to Morocco. And then we took a bus trip around Morocco for like a week. And then
Oh
I
my
came
gosh.
back, yeah, celebrated, New Year's Eve in the Sahara Desert, all that fun stuff. And then we came back to Madrid, back into school, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Teaching. And then I had that flight to Malta. So that was like, that was just like a short time, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
teaching throughout. I think that year I didn't travel for Semana Santa, for Easter break. I didn't travel, so that was like the only real time that I got to rest. All of the other time, it was like my weekends were just like traveling. My weekends were just like running up and down, flying across continents, bus rides
Mhm.
across continents. So like, yeah, you want to see and you want to do all of the things,
Mhm.
but I remember coming back from London on August the 12th, and I just literally just passed out in my room. Like I
Mm.
did nothing. Like for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I was still tired.
Oh.
This Christmas has just been the best. I've just been here and I'm lounging, and I've nowhere to be, no walking tours, no pictures to take. It's just
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
just chilling, having a good, like relaxing time.
Mhm.
And that's why it's like so important for me to like that like honoring yourself like and
Yes,
respecting yourself.
that is
That's
so
what self-care
important.
to me. It's not even like
Yeah.
self-care and self-love. It's more like self-respect and self and honoring yourself. It's like
Yes. Yes, that's a really big important part of it, is respecting yourself and having
yeah,
boundaries for yourself. Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So personal boundaries, yeah, it spills over into the boundaries you set for your other
yeah.
relationships.
So
It
funny
all
enough,
starts with self. Yeah.
Funny enough, that's what travel taught me. Like, I need to
Mm.
respect myself more. Like, yes, we want to travel and we want to have all the fun, but we also don't want to die of exhaustion. Like,
Right, right. I love how travel taught you that, and I feel like when you're on this road of getting to know yourself, we tend to cross paths in some ways. You and I cross paths on being intentional and self-care, but we came to it with very different experiences, and I think that's really big. You know,
yeah,
we all have our own life experiences, but we're all in some way traveling down very similar roads if we are aligned, you know? And I think that's really beautiful in its own way. That's amazing.
it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, that's like the importance of like, having communities like ours.
Mhm.
We show people the range of experiences that people go through, yet we are all experiencing something similar. There's
Mm.
something there that's like unifying
Yes.
that you don't miss just because you live abroad, for example. Like my friends and I, we go through the same things. Like my version of overwhelm and stress is different, like to the sources of theirs, but it's the
Mhm.
same. It's that same feeling. It's that
Mm.
same pressure that from
Mm.
within or from outside. And
Mhm.
like how we deal with that, like we can support each other through it. Just because
Right.
we come through it the same way doesn't mean that we can't be there for each other.
Right. Right. Or even just taking the time to listen to that experience, you know? So
Mhm.
you can find a common I don't want to say common denominator, but a common human experience to
Right.
relate
Yeah.
to the other person.
Yeah.
That's really important. I love that. So what is this is a good one because I'm still thinking about this for myself. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I really did have to think about this for a long time because I don't really think it's come from a person. It's
Mm,
actually come from, don't judge me, but it actually has come from one of those astrology apps,
okay.
uh, Costa.
Okay. All right.
I know people don't like Costa because it just like tells you random stuff, but
A
sometimes
lot
Costa
of yeah, a lot of people don't they don't talk very well on co-star.
don't, and I get it. But sometimes Costa really hits me where I need to be hit. So Costa said to me once, protecting yourself is like wearing armor. Nothing gets in, but nothing gets out. And I feel like for the majority of like those 25 years, that was who I was. Like I was just like in this like iron suit.
Mhm.
And because I just like didn't want to be taken advantage of, or I didn't want, to like have your heart broken, and you didn't want to do like have all these bad experiences. But somehow, like, in protecting yourself, like you're also like keeping a lot inside of you.
Mhm.
And I saw that like for myself, and I saw like how that was harming myself, like my well-being. And so it was difficult to take the armor off and like literally break down walls, because there were walls that I had to break down.
Mm, mm,
um and yeah, but I did it, right?
mm,
And it wasn't just because of that co-star thing. It just came at the right time. Right? It just came at the right time, and I already had the tools, and I already had like the support system around me to do that.
mm,
But yeah, it's something that I really go back to often. Like I sometimes I feel myself, putting back up those walls again. And I
mm,
feel myself like trying to protect myself. But it's just like a reminder to myself, like, what are you protecting yourself from?
mm.
Sometimes, uh, when you take that approach, you're actually attracting the thing that you're protecting yourself from, because you're focused on
Wow.
the thing, right?
I had a conversation about that yesterday. Yeah.
When you're so focused on what you don't want, that is what you get.
Yeah,
Like,
right. It's all about your mindset. Yeah.
yeah, I saw that for myself. I was like, why do I keep getting the same thing over and over again? Like, this is not what I want. Because that's what you're focused on.
Mhm, and that's what you're giving your energy to.
That's my energy too. So then I stopped doing all of that, and I started giving my energy to more of what I wanted. And it was also
Mhm,
something that I went through, in coaching. It was just like, what do I want more of? So like I want to be like, I don't want to be taken advantage of, for example. I don't take advantage of people, so that shouldn't
mm,
really be an issue for me, right? And
mm,
then you show up in a way that allows people to support you, or you show up in a way that allows people to see the value in you. instead of like waiting, for example, for me, like with the Caribbean Millennial, instead of waiting for people to make me feel empowered, I make other people feel empowered, and that in turn makes me feel like people feel
Organically, it'll happen. Right. Right.
just like, a cycle. Like
Right.
what you get is what you get over
Mm-hmm.
and over and over again.
Yeah.
So like I do ever show up in a way that is disrespectful to anybody else. I do ever show up in a way that, is harmful to other people. Because I don't want that for myself. The golden rule, you do unto others as you have them do unto
Right.
you.
Mm-hmm.
That applies to everything. It's not just, a saying in the Bible. It's like it's the real life. That's what
Right.
that's what happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. A lot of times when you're looking, like I'm feeling more I'm feeling disconnected in this, and it's like, how can I connect more so I can feel more connected? And
Yeah.
that's something that it's sometimes when you look at it, it's a bit difficult and it's tender because you're like, you mean I have to give more in order to get more? And it's like it's not overextending. It's just that when you show up as your higher self, or you show up in that version of you,
Yeah.
people are going to see that and they're going to want to gravitate towards that. People gravitate more towards love than fear, you
Yep.
know? Yeah,
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah. It's like that, those moths that are attracted to fires and
To
light
the
bulbs.
light, right.
That's what it is.
Hmm.
And it was one of those things too, like even in that time in my life when I was just like so like, protective of self and everything. People would be like, I had two people tell me in that time when I was like really struggling that when they met me or like when I walk into a room, they felt like there was like light and that came with me. And I was just like, I didn't get that. It's like, I don't know where you're getting that from because it
Hmm.
feels really dark and
Hmm.
stuffy in here. And so like it was just like, a reminder to me or like, that affirmation that you already have the canvas, you already have everything that you need, and you just need to unlearn. That's the key word. You need to unlearn so
Learn.
much. And just like you have to be willing to drop the dead weight.
Hmm.
You know Erica Badu song Bag Lady? That's like my anthem.
Oh, I love that song. It's such a good song because it's like you gotta let go all of it and
To
return back because we come my I sometimes I feel like I'm a little naive to think this, but you can tell me if you can relate to it or not. I feel like we come as our best selves when we enter the world, and because of our environments, our backgrounds, our upbringing, sometimes we tend to put on the weights, tend to put on the conditioning, tend to put on all of that. And then there's something that happens in our lives, whatever crisis that happens in your life, where you come to a head and you're just like you said, you're starting to see things that you never were aware of before. And then, like
yeah.
you said, you unlearn and you unpackage and you start to unpackage all of that. And then once you unpackage all that, you remember who you were when you first came. So it's a lot of it is just remembering, like, oh my gosh, the Lion King, remember who you are.
Yes. That's what it is. It really is. And yes, it does that does speak to me so much
Hmm.
because there's a quote I guess from a book. I don't remember where I also got this one. But she was talking about, when we're children, you people don't really like criticize you as a toddler, for example, like when you're dancing, when you're playing, when you're just like expressing yourself and having a good time. They
Mm.
cheer you on.
Mm.
And then the older you get, you kind of like retreat inwards
Hmm.
because you start to learn different things about the world, like just from like
Mm.
watching your parents and watching TV and listening to music. You learn so much stuff that tells you who you are, who you can be, what people like you do,
Hmm.
how people
What
like
you
you.
should do, what you should not do.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so like it gets to a place, like for example, for me with traveling and living abroad, I am being like, somebody being like part of the minority and just like being so different that transplants, like I have nothing to cling to and nothing is telling me who to be and nothing
Mm.
is telling, yeah. It's kind of like I have this blank canvas again and I get to start over. Who am I
Mm.
going to be? What
Mm.
am I going to allow for myself? What am I
Mm.
going to create with this new life that I have? Yeah. Yeah. That's really what it is.
Yeah, unlearning is a big part of it. It's just getting to know yourself again. and you get to decide how your life turns out. No one else gets, and that's such a powerful and tender thing. It's just like I get to decide. It makes me emotional just talking about it. Like I get to decide what path I choose or what path I'm going down. I don't have to be on autopilot. I can look at everything and use all of my senses to decide where I'm going down the next road and just be present in the moment and just take it moment to moment. Yeah.
I think for a lot of people that knowledge and that power is kind of scary.
It is because it's a lot of power to wield.
With great power comes great responsibility.
So true. So true. No, but that is so true.
Curious things for me, like even still, like knowing that and acknowledging that and believing that, and every fiber of my being, I am scared sometimes to sit down and like do a vision board or to sit down and like journal something because I know, like, I'm not witchy or anything. Things that I say happen. They just do. Like, they do.
The universe wants us to be really specific, and it'll give us exactly what we're asking for.
Every single time I've ever asked the universe for something, I get it. I get it. I get it. And even if I didn't, I don't want to say even if I didn't want it, because I definitely did want it. So like there's this time in Colombia, my friends, they went on like this really cute New Year's Eve trip, and they went to Parque Tayrona. I don't know if you know where that is. It was like it's a nature park, but it's like by the beach, so it's like all protected rainforest, and it's like seaside. People go hiking in, and there's like a lost city or whatever. And I was being super jealous because I wanted to go, but I was saving up to go to Brazil, so I couldn't afford it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I had like this fleeting thought, and I was like, I'm gonna celebrate New Year's Eve in the desert, the Sahara Desert. And I said in the Sahara Desert. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, because at that point in time I wasn't moving to Spain. I didn't even know Spain and Morocco were so close together. I didn't know the Sahara Desert was in Morocco. Like I just had that fleeting thought. And then suddenly in December 2019, it was happening. And I was just like, what? Yeah, it was happening. Like, I was there. And I was just like, things like this are what I live for, right? Like that kind of like, you set yourself up for success. And really, you don't hold on to it too tightly because, like I said, it was a fleeting thought. I didn't even write it down anywhere. I never thought about it again until it was happening, right? So it's like you don't even hold on tightly to things like that. Like you just say, this is what I want, and you have to be open. Like we talked about before, you have to be open to the process of getting it. You have to surrender to it coming, however it may. And you have to be you have to express gratitude when it happens for you. Kind of like I'm fearful of like this whole process of like, wielding all of that power, because what I ask for is what I get. I really just want to be super specific, and I don't want to commit. And I'm just like, okay, this is what you want. I'm going to lock this in, right?
Yeah. I can totally see that. But the thing is that whoever is listening, we all have that power within us. And it's up to us to come into that power and to use it, and to use it for our greater good and our greater success.
Exactly.
And you just all it takes is believing in it and thanking the universe for it.
I was just gonna add that because in the Bible, Jesus talks about it a lot. He was always like, whatever you ask for in prayer, believing you shall receive. And I think that a lot of us come to the Lord in prayer, and we really don't believe that He's gonna give us what we're asking for. Yeah, because
it's like faith without words is dead.
Think that we don't deserve it. And who are you to say that? Like, God created you.
Right.
His image and likeness. Like, what does that mean? Like, it means that you are a manifestation of Him. Like,
right.
And if God is powerful, then on some level, you too are powerful. Like, you just have to believe that. Now, I'm not telling you you're God. You're not. Right? But you just have to believe that when you ask for certain things, like the universe wants to see you win. God didn't create you for it to suffer. What kind of God does that? He didn't do that. He would never do that to you. And so I'm not super religious, but I do 100% believe in the power of the universe, and God created the universe. And so you pray, you speak aloud in the universe, things are gonna start moving for you. You get literally what you think about, you get what you talk about, and you get what you do. It
Mm-hmm.
all comes.
It's all interconnected, and we're interconnected on so many different levels. So it's like we're interconnected with our mind, our thoughts, our actions, and then we're interconnected as people, and then we're interconnected as the collective, and then we're interconnected as like bits and pieces of the universe. Like it's all interconnected. We're
Yeah.
all one in this way. So definitely using your power, the power that is within you, the universe that is within you, to attract what you want is really, really important. What does self-love and self-care mean to you? For Aneakaleigh, your own custom-made definition of it.
So I think we kind of like touched on it a little bit before, but it's about, for me, it's really about being self-respecting and not
Mm,
self-neglecting. So if I'm showing up in a way that's like, not honoring myself and like really neglecting my needs and my wants, my dreams, my goals, then that's not self-care.
mm,
And I feel like sometimes this narrative around on social media and in our society that self-care is just like a thing that you do on a Sunday evening or whenever you have free time. But self-care is something that you do all the time,
every day, even when you're sleeping.
especially when you're sleeping, like,
Yeah.
right? Because the time that you don't sleep, that's you neglecting yourself. And so
Mm,
you're not practicing self-care.
mm,
Self-care is doing more things that fill your cup up. Self-care is having more wholesome conversations. Self-care is like, spending more time with people you actually like, and people who actually, support you and people who actually lift you up.
mm,
That's self-care. Self-care is everything to me,
mm.
literally. So yeah, self-respecting and not self-neglecting.
I love that. Self-respect is very important in your journey to self-care. It'll help you to love yourself more, and definitely to make decisions that are for your greater good or for your higher self. Um,
Yeah.
and it's tender when you're on the road to starting to respect yourself. It can feel like things are falling apart, and it's because the version of you that didn't respect yourself is falling away, and the version of you that is starting to respect yourself is coming from the hidden places that you kept that person,
Yeah.
tuck that person away, and it's coming out into the forefront. So when people tell you you've changed, you're different, yes, it's because I'm respecting myself more and I'm loving myself more, and that's showing up. I'm starting to
Yeah.
show up for myself. So, what advice would you have for aspiring creatives or anyone who wants to come into this field of creating from scratch, or being a blogger or being an entrepreneur? What would you say to them?
This is kind of like something that I learned from one of my coaches, and she said, 'cause she's a marketing coach,
Mm,
so she was like, you have to create the thing that you want to see. But I took it like a step deeper, and I was like,
mm.
create the thing that you wanted the most as a child.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like as a child, what did your childhood self really want to see around him or her?
Mm,
What is that, and why?
mm,
Yeah, so like what did that look like? So I feel like as a child, like I really didn't have that kind of like people like empowering you to do more and
mm,
people like supporting you through like, your crazy wildest dreams. And yeah, my parents did, but I feel like, more community around that.
mm,
Um, and so like that's what I'm trying to do with the Caribbean Millennial, because I feel like as a child, if I had that, like that acceptance and being different, and I wasn't even that different, to be honest. I just didn't want to live at home. I just wanted to
mm,
live abroad. And for some people,
mm,
I was just like, what? So yeah, create the thing that you wanted the most as a
mm,
child, I would say. And that really helps you like sift through all of the things that I should be doing and focus more on like what do you want, because at the end of the day, none of us should be doing things that add stress and suffering to our lives.
right, right.
So like whatever you're doing, if you feel super stressed out and you feel super like, overwhelmed by it, you need to take a step back and ask yourself, who is this for? Like what is the bigger purpose of this? Yeah.
Mm,
Is
mm,
it just likes? Is it just, the followers? Is it just money? then okay, anybody could do that, right? You don't just want to be another person in the blogosphere.
Mm.
You want, ideally, I would think, you want to be showing up in a way that supports others, that gives other people value.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Aneakaleigh. So, where can we find you on these internets, and what are you currently working on?
Where can you? I am on Instagram, so that's at the Caribbean Millennial. We have a podcast that's Bacchanal Abroad. I mean, Facebook, the Caribbean Millennial. Website, the Caribbean Millennial. And what am I working on? I'm working on so much at the same time. Like, so I recently just wrapped up my first semester of coach training, and honestly, like when I got coached, like as you've heard in this podcast, it changed my whole life, and I was just like, it's not something that's a concept back home really. And just like I was just like I would have loved to have that myself, like from a Caribbean person. And my coach was I think she's like has Jamaican heritage, so that was cool too. And she was a Black woman, so that's wonderful. But I feel like when you like see yourself reflected in these spaces, then it just amplifies the transformation and hits home a little bit deeper for you. And so so I am currently going through life coach training, and I'm just showing up in a way that is super empowering to kind of like help people break out of their overwhelm and their anxiety and all of that, because I've been there. I know what that's like, and in some ways I'm still there, because spoiler alert, it doesn't go away.
No.
Yeah, it's something that you have to keep working on, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, people like Kerri and people like myself are here, ready and open and willing to help. Like you just have to ask, have to show up and be like, I need help.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much, Aneakaleigh, for taking the time to speak with us about living intentionally and living in your purpose. This conversation definitely helped to drive home that wherever you are in the world, whether you are living at home, wherever you're listening in the world, or you decided to live abroad, your self-care journey, your self-love journey follows you wherever you go. And it's so important to nourish that. It's so important to be intentional about your choices, the people that you interact with, the things that you say, in order to live your best life. And that was such a great reminder in how to do that and how to make that a daily practice. So if you would like to know more about Aneakaleigh, you can follow her on Instagram and Facebook at the Caribbean Millennial. Go to her website at thecaribbeanmillennial.com and make sure that you told her that you found out about her through the KERRIISMS Speaks podcast. And if you would like to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at KERRIISMS. Everything, all of my social media is under KERRIISMS. Thank you so much for listening to KERRIISMS Speaks.
Thank you all for tuning in. I am truly grateful for every single one of you. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast, rate it, and leave a review. Any feedback you have would be greatly appreciated. You can also contact me directly at KERRIISMS.co. That's KERRIISMS.co. This has been your KERRIISMS coming to you live, reminding you to stay tuned and to stay true, my beautiful crew. Over and out.